So the first set of tutorials that I did here at Go To and Learn were an 8-part series called Flash Video Basics. Now this was created using ActionScript 2. So now that we're doing everything in ActionScript 3, I just wanted to do a tutorial that kind of updated you on how you do custom video in ActionScript 3. So I have Flash CS3 Professional open, and the FLV file that we're going to be using is just an FLV for a trailer that I made for Flash Forward, and I have it on the desktop. So I'm going to create a new Flash file, ActionScript 3, and I'm going to go ahead and save this to the desktop. And I'm just going to call it video, save it, and I'm just going to set up my movie a little bit. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to set the background color to black, and I'm going to make the size of my movie 320 by 240, which is the size of my video file. Okay, so now that I have that, we're going to be doing everything in this tutorial using ActionScript. And it's important to note that inside of Flash, there's multiple ways that you can do video. There's, of course, the FLV playback component, which takes care of a lot of things for you. And that's a good general purpose thing to use. But the way that I showed you in Flash Video Basics was to do it all yourself, to create a custom video player from scratch. And it's still the most versatile way to do things. So that's what I'm going to be showing you here. So in that first tutorial, I showed you that we needed to create an embedded video object. So we still need to create that object before we went into this little flyout menu in the library panel to create that object. Well, you can still do that, but one of the great new features in ActionScript 3 is we can create video objects just using ActionScript. So we don't even have to have that in the library, and that's what I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to rename that first layer to Actions, unlock it, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up the Actions panel. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is now we're going to create that embedded video object in ActionScript. So I'm going to call it video, and we're going to data type it to video, so that this video class is the embedded video object, equals new video, and to the constructor here we tell it the width and height that we want our video at. So I wanted it 320 by 240. Okay, so now from here, just like everything else that's visual in ActionScript 3, in order to see this video object, we need to add it to the display list. We use the add child method to do that. So I'm going to say add child, and I'm going to add video to the display list. So now we've gone ahead and created our embedded video object at 320 by 240, and we've added it to the display list. Now we can start doing the net connection and net stream code. So again, if you need a complete review on this, the majority of the information that are in the Video Basics tutorials are still going to apply for ActionScript 3. What I'm showing you are the things that have changed. So just like before, we're going to create a net connection object. I'm going to call it NC is equal to new net connection. And just like before, we need to call the nc.connect method and pass in null. Okay, and again, just like before, we need to create our net stream object, which I'm going to call ns is equal to new net stream, and again we need to pass in the net connection object that this stream is going to be coming through. So I'm going to pass in nc. Okay, so now if you looked at the previous tutorial, what we would now do is we would attach that net stream to the video object, to the embedded video object. In ActionScript 2, we use the attach video method to do that. Well, in AS3, it's actually a little bit more, it makes a little more sense, because there's now an attach net stream method of the video object. So here we're attaching our net stream to our embedded video object. Okay, so now that we have that, now all we need to do now, technically, at least going by the first tutorial, is just to tell the NetStream to start playing our FLV. So that's still the same. We say ns, and we call the play method, and we pass in the URL to our FLV, which is fftrailer.flv. So let's go ahead and we can test this now. Okay, so now we can see our video is playing, but we've got this little error message. So again, this is now working for the most part. So we have our video playing, our embedded video object that we created is here, and it's playing our FLV. But we can see we got this error, and it's an unhandled async error event. It basically is telling us that there's no callback set up for the on metadata information and the metadata event. So the way it works in ActionScript 3 is we have to create an object that will be called. We'll need to create an object with an on metadata method that will be called when the metadata is received. So again, this code is probably not the most straightforward, but in any case, this is how it works. So what we need to do is we need to create an object that's going to have a method that will receive our metadata. So I'm going to create an object. I'm going to call it meta. Again, I'm just going to data type it to an object. Is equal to new object. Okay, so now this object needs to have an on metadata method or function, and this is the function that's going to receive the event from the NetStream. So I'm going to say meta.on metadata is equal to function. Now we're actually going to receive an object with that metadata information to this function. So we need to have a parameter here to catch it. I'm just going to call it meta. Oh, let me close this. Okay, so now that we have this function defined on this object, I'm simply going to trace out the duration property. So that will be meta.duration. And there are other properties inside of the object that gets sent, but duration is one typical one that you'll want, and this will return the duration in seconds for your video. So now that we've created this object with this on metadata function, now we just need to associate this, and we need to tell the NetStream about this object that we just created. So the way we do that is we set the client property for the NetStream equal to that object. So now the NetStream knows which client is going to be handling the metadata information, and in this case it's this object called meta. So if you're kind of scratching your head thinking, I kind of understand what he meant, it doesn't make doesn't make the most sense, I'm in complete agreement with you here, but that's just the way it is. You create this object with this on metadata function and then tell the NetStream about that object. So now if we test the movie, we can now see that it's playing like it should be, and now we have the output, which is the duration of our FLV file, which is 44.251 seconds. Okay, so now we have a complete working block of code for doing custom video in ActionScript 3. But another thing that you're going to want is you're going to want to be able to respond to status events from the NetStream. So if you look back at the old video basics tutorials, you can see the way we did it. It's a little bit different in ActionScript 3, and that's just because events in general are a lot different in ActionScript 3. So now what we do is we need to add an event listener to our NetStream. So ns.addEventListener, and then it's a net status event dot net status, and that's the event that we're responding to, and now we need to give it a function that's going to be called when that event fires. So I'm just going to call it on status event, And now I'm going to come under here and I'm going to create that function. So function on status event. And again, we're going to get an information object with that status information. So I need to have a parameter here. I'm just going to call it stat. And I'm going to data type it to an object. This function is not going to be returning anything, so I put void. Okay, so now in here, I just in this example, I just want to trace out what the status event is whenever this is fired. So to do that, I'm just going to trace, and it's inside of my stat object. So inside of this stat object is an object called info, which contains our information. So stat.info, and then .code is the actual property that tells us which status event has fired. So now I'm going to test it, and now you can see immediately we got netstream.play.start, and here we have our duration, and now I have another status event saying the buffer is full. So anytime the status events for the net stream fire, it's going to go into that on status event code block. So again, for the most part, it's the same. The main differences are, first, we can create video objects from ActionScript, so we don't have to go through the library like before. Now we use the proper ActionScript 3 add event listener syntax for the status event. For metadata, we create an object with a function called onMetadata that's going to receive that information, and the embedded video object now has an attached net stream rather than an attached video. So that's the basics of doing custom video inside of ActionScript 3.